Turn now to the No Kings demonstrations around the country. Streets were filled with peaceful demonstrators protesting the Trump administration's policies. Our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is here with the latest for us. Good morning to you, Rachel.
Robin, good morning to you. And this is shaping up to be the largest display of defiance and opposition to President Trump since he took office again. Organizers say nearly 7 million people took to the streets for the No Kings protests to protest what they call an abuse of power by President Trump. The demonstrations happening in more than 2,000 cities and towns, 200,000 people showing up in the president's own backyard in Washington, D.C. The protesters say they were fueled by the president's sweeping cuts to the federal government, his crackdown on immigration, and his decision to send the National Guard into Democratic states. The president responded by mocking the rallies on social media, calling it a joke. But these were massive crowds that turned out to send the president a message. This morning, it is being described as one of the largest single-day protests in U.S. history.
Yeah, that's very peaceful.
And I know, Pastor, this is your first television interview since the moment that we're showing here where you were shot 7 times with pepper balls by ICE agents while praying outside that Broadview ICE facility where Omar is standing tonight. And Reverend, I really appreciate your being willing to speak with us about this because we had shown people this video last night. I know you sued the Trump administration after this happened, and today a federal judge granted you a victory, ordering federal agents from, quote, using riot control weapons against protesters, religious practitioners, and journalists unless they have probable cause of a crime. Obviously a significant victory. Reverend, what's your reaction to that?
Well, it's a victory that belongs to everyone who lives in the United States of America, and particularly to the brave protesters and demonstrators who've been showing up. And I am so grateful for the work of the ACLU and Lovey and Lovey, who argued this case so well and brought it to this conclusion.
So we were showing, right, those agents on the top of the roof, right, you were shot by pepper balls. You were obviously, brought down to the ground. I know you said that they were laughing. There were some of the agents laughing after this happened. Can you tell me more about that, what they did, and at that moment, what you thought?
Yeah, we could hear them laughing as they were shooting us from the roof, and it was deeply disturbing. We've gotten to witness a few things about these ICE agents operating in Broadview, and really what it has shown us is how disorganized they are and how poorly supervised and trained they are. We've also heard ICE agents talking to each other, one of whom said, man, I don't even remember why I'm here anymore, and the other said, I don't know either. So there's a deep demoralization that we are seeing as we're bringing this peaceful and spiritual protest against their tactics and what they are doing to our city and our communities and our neighbors. And I'm grateful to show up with these protesters, people who deeply believe in democracy and are bringing peaceful and moral witness against what the Trump administration is trying to do in Chicago.
Reverend Black, I'm grateful for your time, and thank you very much for being willing to come on and share the story.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and thank you for your moral courage in reporting on these stories.
The Cyberspace Administration of China has launched a 2-month nationwide campaign to sweep social media and live streaming platforms for content that the regulator says viciously stimulates negative emotions, incites hostility, or even spreads economic pessimism. Even by China's stringent information control standards, the move is to categorize any commentary on economic woes as malicious content, which is unprecedented. The move comes in the wake of disciplinary actions against social media platforms, citing damage to the online ecosystem by carrying celebrity gossip and trivial personal updates. The platform's short video app, Kushao, microblogging site Weibo, and Instagram-like Xiao Hongshu have expressed contrition and pledged compliance. The CAS says the campaign will involve audit of trending topics, recommended feeds, and comment sections across various platforms. China's economy has grown much slower in the second quarter of this year. Last month, that prompted a new meme about bleak prospects for jobs, incomes, and opportunities. Called the garbage time of history, the meme has since gone viral in China with the underlying theme being the value of hard work in a system that no longer rewards it. The campaign is likely to rely on algorithmic throttling of doom and gloom keywords and lay out new rules for creators. Now, according to reports, Weibo has already told finance bloggers to avoid bad-mouthing the economy. China has previously come down heavily on social media trends about showing off wealth. Recent events in Nepal, when a young populace, disenchanted by social media posts highlighting the excesses of the wealthy and the powerful, stroked a coup, would not have gone unnoticed in China.
It's art that reflects America as much as a Norman Rockwell painting, more so even around these parts. Inside this bright modern space, comedy legend turned arts patron Cheech Marin has built a museum where the art reflects the lives, dreams, and perspectives of the tens of millions of Americans of Mexican heritage, or Chicanos.
It is a viewpoint of America and American population that a lot of people don't ever get to see if they don't travel out of their own locale. They're not from.
He says Chicano artists never gave up the brush, a handmade painterly tradition that has resisted trends and keeps the work grounded in skill and touch.
The Chicano artists, by means of sticking to the brush, have become great painters, and there's a lot of great painters in this collection, a lot.
What do you think that having Chicano art in a space like this gives this community?
Oh, they feel great pride because if they ever go into other museums, they don't see that in other museums. It's unique. This is the first Chicano museum, and it's here in Riverside.
He sees art as a form of citizenship, a way for Mexican Americans to claim space in a country that hasn't always welcomed them.
Hey, get over here, somebody, I'm an American citizen.
In your 1987 movie, Born in East LA, you play an American citizen who is arrested during an ICE raid in downtown Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I am curious about how you felt in the past few months when all of that played out again in front of our eyes.
So it's played out many times already, and it's just curious that we have not adapted laws or programs to enshrine that, that's and how we depend on Mexican culture and always have, because it's a traditional path, and somehow made it other. They're not other in the foxholes, in the trenches when they're out fighting wars.
Hearing you talk about it, though, it brings to mind something that I've heard time and again from Latino artists, from Latino makers of any kind, mm-hmm. which is that we feel like we can't quite get to the big league, or that we can't. We're being told, we're being held back, or we're just not quite as good as other people. How do you get over that?
You don't believe it in the first place. That's what you don't believe it in the first place. I never believed that. Having the opportunity, and this is an opportunity. This museum is up, and there's others, and they're coming fast and furious on our heels. So. It'll be as American as McDonald's before you know it.
Is that your dream? Is that your prediction?
No, yeah. It's not a dream anymore. It's a reality. So, if you like art, you'll come and check it out.
What we are witnessing right now, right before our eyes, is the rise of two very separate and distinct Americas. One for the billionaire class and one for everybody else. For most Americans, the system is not just broken. It is collapsing, and it is increasingly resembling life in the third world. Everyone needs health care. It's not a radical idea. Yet today, over 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured, a number that will rise by at least 15 million because of Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill and massive cuts to Medicaid and the ACA. Everyone needs housing. Yet today, nearly 800,000 Americans are homeless, and over 20 million households pay more than 50% of their limited incomes on rent or a mortgage. Now, how do you have any money left over for anything if you're spending 50% of your income for housing? Since the year 2000, average rents have more than doubled, and the median price of a home today has soared to more than $435,000. Everyone needs a decent education. You cannot survive in this world today without a good education. Yet today, our child care system is broken and widely expensive. Many of our public schools are dilapidated with teachers underpaid and underappreciated. And American students are falling behind in math, science, and reading compared to their international peers. College education is unaffordable for millions, and vocational schools are failing to train the workers we desperately need. Everyone wants a secure retirement. Yet nearly half of older workers have no retirement savings and no idea as to how they will ever retire with any shred of dignity or respect. Meanwhile, 22% of seniors are trying to survive on an income of less than $15,000 a year. Enough is enough. It's absolutely imperative that we understand the reality of what is going on today and the need to bring about the fundamental changes that are required to create a government and an economy that work for all and not just the few. America is not supposed to be a nation run by a handful of unbelievably wealthy oligarchs, while at the same time a majority of our people struggle to afford the very basic necessities of life. That's not what America is supposed to be about. So let us stand together, let us go forward, and let us create the kind of nation that you and I know that we can become. Thank you very much.
Steve Sosebee, Executive Director of Heal Palestine, a nonprofit organization founded in 2024 to help deliver relief and support to Palestinian children and families. Thank you very much for joining us, Steve. Can you just give us a status update for what's happening on the ground?
Well, what's happening on the ground is that everybody's trying to get aid in, and the restrictions are still making it quite difficult to get the amount of aid that's needed to reach the people who have, over the last 2 years plus, been subjected to, the lack of food, lack of education, lack of clean water, lack of shelter, lack of healthcare services. When we're talking about aid, it's not just the basic stuff that's needed now. Of course, that's what's urgent and what needs to be provided, most importantly, food. But in addition to that, we have nearly 90% of the population do not have shelter. The access to clean water is, extremely difficult. The schools have been closed for 2 years. So we're thinking of not only the aid that's required now to help people get through this immediate acute stage, this lack of basic humanitarian supplies that have been denied to them over the past 2 years, but what's the long-term consequences of rebuilding Gaza and the impact what has happened over the past few years? What's the impact, the long-term impact going to have on the lives of especially children in Gaza, who make up half the population?
That's a really good point. I wonder, after the initial flood of aid and the trucks that come in, what is the next thing that needs to happen to make sure that malnutrition is kept at bay? What is the next step after just bringing in the trucks?
I think continuous access is really important. We have to remember that Gaza does not produce hardly any of its own food. The agricultural lands have been destroyed. The manufacturing that existed before, which was minimal but did exist, has been destroyed. So all food has to be brought in from outside. So there needs to be a continuous access from outside of food being brought in. And what's important now is also shelter, where winter is coming to Gaza. Winter in Gaza is quite harsh. and that people are living in tents. They do not have the basic requirements to just, even in many cases, survive these winters without disease, without other infections that are taking place, and without a healthcare system that has been utterly destroyed. Being able to treat these patients who get these kind of infections is really going to be a huge challenge. So we need to not only provide food, we need to provide shelter, we need to provide healthcare services, we need to provide education. Everything is needed, and nothing exists right now.
So part of the reason why it's been slower is that Israel, and they've long argued this, they need to check these trucks and make sure that arms aren't being smuggled in, et cetera. How do you mitigate that security concern while also getting this much needed help in quickly?
Certainly, whatever requirements are needed for security concerns on the part of the Israelis, and all the aid groups are ready to abide by. We provide not only the complete inventory of what we're sending in, but it goes through their screening process. So once it goes through that screening process, it should then be able to enter Gaza and reach the people. So while they may have legitimate security concerns, those security concerns can be met, and we can get aid to people in a timely manner. It doesn't mean that they don't get any aid. There just should be a very quick and thorough process in place to make sure it gets through to the people in need before the situation gets worse.
Do it quickly without the Rafah crossing being open?
I think that's going to be a huge challenge. Rafah crossing is a major source of aid coming in. Obviously, there's literally thousands of trucks that can enter and are ready to enter Gaza right away through Rafah, and it's been the traditional source of aid coming in. So I think it's been going to be a huge, huge undertaking to think that we can start the rebuilding process, provide shelter, provide food, provide clean water, provide medication, provide medical services to the degree in which it's needed without having the Rafah border open. I think it's almost impossible to have that expectation.
All right, Steve Sosebee, thank you very much for coming on and helping us understand. We appreciate it.
Every dawn, every day, they come by the hundreds. Thousands will pass through. They're so close, they can almost touch it. They can practically taste it. It's a dream worth going the distance for. And they'll try everything.
So you want to come to America?
Yes, that's right.
In southern India, a place where people pray to get there, with passports in hand.
How many friends of yours have come here and prayed for a visa and gotten it?
Well, I wouldn't have the number per se, but my sister, my own sister, she's in Belgium. She's in Brussels right now.
So it worked?
So, yes, it does work.
This is not science. Just have some faith. Follow a few steps. Offer your prayer and take 11 laps around the temple. When the wish comes true, take 108 laps to say thank you.
I went inside and I made a wish. And if you see me back here, you'll know it came true.
I will be happy.
Me too.
Yeah. Our Lord is answering the prayer for different types of prayer.
For children, for success, everything. For health, for visas.
Yes. If you put a plug and then you put a fan, the wire is in between.
This is the wire.
So we feel, we are a part of this transmission line.
This little temple has a big reputation for connecting Indians to the rest of the world. It started decades ago, mostly with students praying to get to the US. They would make the rounds and seemingly get luckier in visa lotteries.
This is Voice of Temples, and they've got some testimonials in here. Visa rejected, visa granted. My friend tried for a visa 4 times and got rejected. I brought him here. This time the visa was granted without any hindrance.
It was word of mouth, now word has spread. Among thousands of people still dreaming of getting to America.
We're on the 4th lap now. Are you starting to feel luckier?
Well, I don't know. Let's hope I do.
And you're prepared to come back here and do how many laps if you get a visa?
108.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll do a few of them with you, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Alexandra Field, CNN, Hyderabad.
Let's just talk about the immigration thing. The way it looks is horrific. When you're just arresting people in front of their kids and just normal, regular people that have been here for 20 years, that everybody who has a heart can't get along with that.
No.
Everybody who has a heart sees that and goes, that can't be right. That can't be right. That can't be the only way to do this.
Right.
because you have to think, look, yeah, we have to have a border. Yes, it should have been secure. Yes, they should make sure you know who everybody is before they get in.
Yeah.
But when people have been here for 20 years, like, come on, man. That's crazy. Like, let's find a way. If they've been productive members of society for 20 years, no criminal record, they worked the entire time, they paid taxes, find them a pathway to citizenship. Find a way where you can do this thing that you want to do, which is keep terrorists and cartel members from getting across the border with drugs that kill 100,000 people a year. Okay, but also have a fucking heart. Because if you don't, you're not going to get anybody on your side. If you're doing this stuff publicly, throwing women to the ground, handcuffing people, just for existing on the wrong side of the dirt. Not a criminal. Not the only crime they ever committed was coming over here as a kid. They probably didn't even know what the fuck was going on.
Man.
You know, a lot of kids got snuck across when they were already born in Mexico. And they've grown up their entire life in America. They can't even speak Spanish. And they could get sent back.
You helped me in ways you did not know this week. You wrote a very helpful piece in the Washington Post breaking down the legality of the new policy to kill suspected drug smugglers. I pay close attention to these things that you write for all of those reasons. But I want to read to you. Here's what you wrote about the drug boats. These attacks risk crossing the line between crime fighting and war. The Trump administration is right that illicit drugs are inflicting more harm on the United States than most armed conflicts have. But the U.S. cannot wage war against any source of harm to Americans. American law instead relies upon the criminal justice or civil tort systems to respond to broad, persistent social threat harms. Tell us more. Why do you say that?
Chris, as you mentioned in your intro, I was an official on 9/11 at the Justice Department. We faced a similar challenge. Should we consider foreign terrorist attacks to be an act of war or crime? It's important that we maintain that distinction. You can't use the military, which is authorized to use force and doesn't use trials. We can't use that to solve every social problem. Crime, generalized crime, harms more Americans than foreign attacks. Drug use harms more Americans than foreign attacks. We're losing more people now annually to fentanyl overdoses than we've lost in many American wars overall. But that doesn't mean that you can start shooting drug dealers on the street without trial, right? We have to make sure that that line doesn't get crossed except for the right things. So on 9/11, we decided foreign terrorist groups could be enemies, which we would use the military against, but that doesn't mean anyone who's a terrorist suddenly becomes subject to military jurisdiction. I think that's true here with the drug boats too. The United States can't just start using the military to attack anyone involved in the drug trade. That would cross a line from crime into war where it's not justified and open up a series of consequences I don't think the American people would want. There is a way out for the Trump administration, though, which is to say, much like we did in 9/11, what we are focused on is Venezuela. If our enemy is Venezuela and the drug cartels are part of the Venezuelan government, the Venezuelan regime, and the use of force and the military is focused only on Venezuela and its government and its elements, then I think the law would allow what we're seeing today.
All right, Professor, thank you for taking us to school. You are a great resource to us.
I never dreamed when I signed on to here how big this problem was going to be. You're going to want to see this. You can see it running out of the surface casing right here. Bubbles right there. Nobody can come out here and say this well's not leaking. Every time I have stuck a bucket in the ground, there's a problem well.
The Permian Basin is the world's biggest shale oil production basin, and it's really helped to revolutionize the U.S. oil industry and also the U.S. economy over the last 10 years.
What happens over time is the basin becomes like a layer cake, where you have different types of rocks, and then in those basins, oil and gas develop. But the Permian has a water problem.
For every barrel of oil that is produced in the Permian Basin, you also get about 3 to 5 barrels of wastewater.
The vast majority of that water gets re-injected down into the subsurface, and that re-injection changes the pressures and reactivates existing faults.
From 2021 to 2023, you had a couple hundred earthquakes per year. And we started writing stories about how Texas could be on track to eclipse California for the most earthquakes.
There is no doubt now that the earthquakes in the Permian Basin are largely driven by oil and gas operations. But most earthquakes out in the Permian Basin are not generated directly from hydrofracking. It's more about the produced water.
So both the operator response group and the regulator decided that they had to do something. How about we shift wastewater disposal from deep to shallow?
So as you're disposing more in shallow wells, that's starting to build up the pressure in the shallow part of the Earth's crust. And eventually that leads to water leaking and becoming geysers.
I call them zombie wells because they are supposed to be dead, and like zombies, they rise from the grave, and they're unkillable because you have to kill the source, which is the produced water. My name is Sarah Stogner, and I'm the lawyer that came out here and started seeing problems with these wells. We are digging up wells because they're leaking this black, stinky stuff, which is crude oil that's supposed to be 2,400 feet below the ground. And because they've been over-injecting water from the new horizontal wells, it's pushing this stuff up and through these old wellbores. If the Permian Basin is one like huge giant cake, and you've stabbed it enough that it's kind of fragile, and then you start taking icing out, and that oil comes with water, and it's not clean water, it's toxic, it's nasty. Well, you put it into a shallower layer. That shallower layer isn't used to having all of that water in it. And now you've got all these straws that were poked, and pressure will find the path of least resistance. And so now what we've got is a disaster of a cake that's collapsing over here. It's rising up over here. The icing is leaking between layers. It's coming up its surface. That's what's happening. I think I didn't realize how bad the situation was, and Chevron already did, and the Railroad Commission already did.
The first thing you need to know about the Railroad Commission of Texas is that it's the oil and gas regulator in Texas. We really wanted to kind of get to the bottom of this, to say, what is the relationship between the regulator and the industry? And what did they know? When did they know it? So we submitted a bunch of Freedom of Information requests. We received back a huge volume of information. This is a presentation from the Railroad Commission to the Texas Pipeline Association. It shows that the Railroad Commission was fully aware of some of the hazards that were coming from increased reservoir pressure. Indeed, I have a slide here titled Hazards from Increased Reservoir Pressure. It includes drilling hazards, well damage, tubular corrosion, harm to legacy production, confinement failure, surface flows, and harm to underground sources of drinking water. Which raises a lot of questions. Why proceed when you know that there are clear present dangers?
If we want to continue to produce oil and gas in Texas, in the United States, we have to find a solution to the water problem.
What began a couple years ago was an effort to start to look at other ways to reuse this water.
The treated water, it's clear. You don't see any particulate in it. This is essentially distilled quality water. That fresh water can then be used for other industrial applications like cooling towers, things like building and construction materials for agriculture.
We're now at the point where we wonder how fast this can sort of be made economical for the oil companies to clean it in scale.
2018, 2019, we were talking about 8 to 10 million barrels of water a day. 2 years ago, we were talking about 18 million barrels, and now we're talking about 25 to 30 million barrels. And these horizontal wells, the older they get, the more water they produce to oil.
People just think of West Texas as a barren wasteland, and that's not what it is. Oh, we got some wildlife. This should be a huge concern for the Railroad Commission, but it's not in their backyard.
This is a world first on Mount Everest. Andre Bargiel has just climbed up and skied down the highest mountain on Earth without supplementary oxygen. He climbed for 16 hours above 8,000 meters in the death zone. At this extreme altitude, the oxygen in the air is so low that most humans cannot survive.
Okay, brother, you are very strong Superman.
I am on top of the highest mountain in the world, and I'm going to descend it on skis.
After reaching the summit, Bargiel clipped into his skis and began descending via the South Col route. This follows some of the most technical and exposed terrain in the world.
It's something eat.
He reached Camp 2 by nightfall, making safe navigation impossible and resting for the night. At first light, he continued and skied through the Kumbu icefall, arguably the most dangerous place on the mountain. From base camp, his brother scouted the terrain by drone and guided Andre around the crevasses, shifting ice and avalanches. Bargiel has just made history.